all our relationships. When we become too preoccupied with proving our worth, we're no longer present. We're not truly connecting, we're performing. And people can feel that. The truth is, deep connections are built on authenticity, not effort. They arise when you stop trying to fit into someone else's mold and start standing firmly in your own. When you release the need to prove yourself, something profound happens. You shift from a place of seeking to a place of offering. Instead of asking, how can I make them want me, you ask, what do I bring to this relationship simply by being who I am? It's not about arrogance or indifference. It's about trusting that who you are at your core is already enough. Think of it like a flame. A flame doesn't beg others to notice its warmth or light. It simply burns, and in doing so, it naturally draws people to its glow. That's the kind of energy you embody when you stop chasing and start aligning with your authentic self. You become the flame not desperately seeking attention, but offering light and warmth to those who choose to come close. Let's reflect on why this shift is so transformative. When you're at ease with yourself, when you've embraced your own value, you stop needing others to complete you. This is where the real magic begins. Relationships no longer feel like negotiations or transactions. They become invitations. Invitations for others to join you, not because you need them to, but because you choose to share your life with them. And here's the irony: when you no longer depend on someone's approval, they begin to see you in a new light. They sense your freedom, your confidence, your self-sufficiency, and it creates a kind of magnetism. People are drawn to those who are whole, who stand tall without leaning on others for their sense of balance. But this isn't a game or a tactic. It's a way of living. It's about recognizing that your worth doesn't come from someone else's opinion or presence. It comes from the way you inhabit your own life. When you let go of the need to convince anyone of your value, you create a space where real connections can flourish, where people are drawn to you not because of what you do for them, but because of who you are. So, stop chasing and start aligning. Focus on becoming the person you're proud to be. Build a life that reflects your values, your passions, your joys. And in doing so, you'll find that the right people, the ones who truly matter, will naturally be drawn to you. Not because you've convinced them, but because they can't help but recognize what's already so abundantly clear: you are enough. Always have been. Always will be. Imagine a world where your worth is not dictated by the opinions of others. A world where your value isn't something you constantly strive to prove, but something you carry within you like a quiet, steady flame. So often we find ourselves seeking approval, searching for validation in fleeting words and gestures from those around us. But in doing so, we lose sight of a profound truth: your worth has never been up for debate. It is not something that needs affirmation or acknowledgement. It simply is. The moment you recognize this is the moment you become unshakable. This realization doesn't come with fanfare or applause. It's quiet, like a sudden clarity that settles in when the noise subsides. To truly recognize your worth, you must look inward, past the clutter of societal expectations and personal insecurities. Think of it as uncovering a hidden gem buried beneath layers of doubt and comparison. The gem was always there, pristine and unchanging. It's simply been obscured by the stories we tell ourselves, stories of inadequacy, of not being enough, or of needing to earn love and respect. Have you ever noticed how people respond to someone who carries themselves with quiet confidence? They lean in, they're drawn to that energy. This isn't arrogance, it's a deep, unspoken understanding of one's value. It's an energy that says, I know who I am, and I am enough as I am. People may not be able to articulate why they're so captivated by such a presence, but they feel it. It's magnetic, unpretentious, and undeniable. And yet, this recognition of worth is not about separating yourself from others or building walls of superiority. On the contrary, it's about connecting more deeply. When you no longer depend on others to define your value, your interactions with them become freer, more authentic. You are not playing a role or striving to meet expectations, you're simply being. In this way, recognizing your worth isn't just a gift to yourself, it's a gift to everyone you meet. It's a reminder that they too are whole, just as they are. Let me tell you a story. There was once a musician who played for years in the shadows of great concert halls, never quite feeling seen or appreciated. One day she decided to stop performing for the applause and instead played for herself for the joy, the beauty, and the truth of the music. Something extraordinary happened. Her music became more soulful, more alive. People began to stop and truly listen, not because she demanded their attention, but because her authenticity spoke directly to their hearts. She had discovered that her worth as a musician, as a person, had nothing to do with the size of the audience or the volume of their applause. It was always there, independent and unchanging. This is the kind of transformation that happens when you recognize your inherent worth. You no longer move through life chasing validation or fearing rejection. Instead, you walk with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they have nothing to prove. And that changes everything. It changes how people see you, how they treat you, and most importantly, how you see and treat yourself. So let this be the starting point. Stop searching for your value in the eyes of others. You don't need anyone to affirm what you already know deep down. The only validation you need is the understanding that you are whole and complete, just as you are. When you carry that truth, you become someone who is not easily overlooked or taken for granted. You become the one they fear losing, not because of any external force, but because your presence carries a depth and authenticity that is irreplaceable. And so, the first step is simply this look inward, not outward. What you seek has been within you all along, waiting to be seen. Recognize it, embrace it, and carry it forward with grace. Everything else will follow. In life, we often get caught up in the endless loop of seeking approval, bending and shaping ourselves to fit into the expectations of others. We try to be what we think they want, pleasing, accommodating, always agreeable. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with kindness or compromise, when these actions come at the expense of our authenticity, we lose something essential. We lose the truth of who we are. And without that truth, without that firm anchor, we begin to drift, tethered only to the fleeting opinions and needs of those around us. But here's the paradox: when you lose yourself in trying to keep others happy, you do not gain their respect or love. Quite the opposite. People sense, often unconsciously, when someone is not fully grounded in their own being. They may take you for granted or expect more and more, leaving you feeling depleted, even invisible. Why does this happen? It's because by not standing firmly in your authenticity, you send a subtle signal to the world that your value is negotiable, that you can be molded to fit their narrative. Yet something magical happens when you stop all of that, when you stop trying to be what others want, and instead commit to being fully and unapologetically yourself. You reclaim your power. You no longer give it away to the shifting demands and judgments of others. And the world responds to that. People are drawn to authenticity in a way they can't quite explain. It's not loud or boastful. It's a quiet strength that says, "Here I am. Take me as I am or not at all." This isn't about being rigid or refusing to grow. It's about recognizing that growth comes from a place of self-awareness, not from trying to become someone you're not. True growth happens when you embrace who you are at your core, flaws and all, and build from that foundation. When you do this, you create an unshakable sense of self, one that doesn't crumble when faced with criticism or rejection. Consider a tree in a storm. The wind howls, the rain lashes, and yet the tree remains standing because its roots are deep and strong. Its branches may sway, even lose a few leaves, but it doesn't topple. This is what it means to live authentically. Your roots, your sense of self, anchor you, while your branches, your actions and interactions can adapt and flow with the circumstances around you. When you live this way, something shifts in your relationships. The dynamics change. People start to see you differently, not as someone they can shape to their liking, but as someone with a clear, undeniable presence. They may even fear losing you, not because of manipulation or games, but because they recognize your unique essence. They see that you're not dependent on their validation to feel whole. And that's a rare and powerful quality. There's an unexpected freedom in this way of being. You no longer feel the need to chase love, approval, or attention. Instead, you allow these things to come to you naturally, drawn by the magnetism of your authenticity. And if they don't come, you're at peace with that too, because you know your worth isn't diminished by anyone else's inability to see it. So I urge you to stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. Stop pretending to be less than you are to fit into someone else's story. Instead, step fully into your truth. Speak your mind. Live in alignment with your values. Embrace the parts of yourself you've been told are too much or not enough. Because the moment you do, you'll find that the world begins to shift around you. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to demand respect. Simply be yourself fully and without apology. That alone is enough to transform not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. When you stand firmly in your authenticity, you become unshakable. You become the one they fear losing, not because you've demanded it, but because you've earned it by being nothing more and nothing less than exactly who you are. It's a curious thing, isn't it? How we often place our happiness and sense of self-worth in the hands of others. We wait for them to validate us, to choose us, to prove that we are enough. And yet, the more we seek this outside ourselves, the more elusive it becomes. It's as if the harder we chase, the further it retreats, leaving us feeling empty and unseen. But what if the key to being truly valued lied in what in the car? Convincing others of our worth, but in embodying it so deeply that it becomes undeniable. When you think about the people you admire, the ones who captivate your attention, they have something in common. They don't beg for acceptance or chase after approval. They move through life with a quiet confidence, a sense of wholeness that radiates from within. And this isn't because they are perfect or free from flaws. It's because they've stopped looking outward for their sense of self and have turned inward instead. They've built a life that is rich and fulfilling on its own, independent of who does or doesn't choose to be part of it. Imagine for a moment that your life is a grand, beautiful house. If that house is filled with light, warmth, and everything that brings you joy, then someone entering it will feel the richness of what you've created. They'll want to stay not because they feel obligated, but because they recognize the beauty of what exists there. On the other hand, if your house is empty, cold, or dim, you might desperately try to convince them to stay, hoping they'll fill the void. But that desperation only drives people away. Nobody wants to feel like they're responsible for completing someone else's life. This is why the greatest gift you can give yourself and others is to create a life so fulfilling, so alive, that anyone who enters it feels privileged to be there. It's not about arrogance or shutting others out. It's about cultivating a sense of joy and purpose that doesn't hinge on anyone else's presence. It's about becoming so grounded in who you are that your value isn't a question up for debate. And here's the secret: when you do this, something incredible happens. People start to notice. They sense that you're not waiting for their validation, not bending over backward to fit into their narrative. Instead, you're writing your own story, and they realize they want to be part of it. not out of obligation or pity, but because they see something extraordinary in you, someone who doesn't need them but chooses them. And that choice, free from desperation or dependency, is powerful. This isn't about playing hard to get or pretending to be indifferent. It's about a genuine shift in perspective. Instead of asking, what do they think of me, you ask, what do I think of myself? Instead of wondering how you can make someone else happy, you ask, what brings me joy? This shift doesn't make you selfish, it makes you whole. It allows you to show up in your relationships from a place of abundance, not lack. And when you do, you stop fearing loss because you know you're already complete. The beauty of this is that it doesn't require anyone else to change. You don't have to convince someone to stay or regret someone leaving. You simply live your life in such a way that it becomes an invitation. And if someone accepts that invitation, it's because they see the value in what you've created. If they don't, it doesn't diminish you, because your worth was never tied to their presence in the first place. So, let this be your focus, not on chasing others, but on building a life so full, so vibrant, that those who see it are drawn to it naturally. Not because you need them, but because your light, your joy, your sense of purpose becomes a magnet. And if they choose to walk away, let them. Your life, your house, remains beautiful, full, and whole, ready to welcome those who truly appreciate it. Never forget this: the most powerful relationships are not born from need, but from choice. Be so grounded in your worth that others recognize it without you ever having to say a word. And when they do, it will be because they see what you've already known all along, that your value is not something they define, it's something you embody. Isn't it fascinating how the energy we project can shape the dynamics of our relationships? So often we're drawn into this delicate balancing act, where we find ourselves trying too hard, working tirelessly to be enough, to be noticed, to be appreciated. But in this striving, we unknowingly create a tension that pushes others away. It's a paradox: the more we grasp, the more it slips through our fingers. Consider for a moment what happens when you walk into a room full of people. If you radiate ease, presence, and a quiet sense of assurance, it puts others at ease. They gravitate toward that energy, drawn not by effort, but by a natural pull. Contrast that with someone who enters the room seeking approval, their energy charged with anxiety and the need to be liked. It creates an invisible barrier, an unspoken discomfort that repels rather than attracts. This principle applies to all our relationships. When we become too preoccupied with proving our worth, we're no longer present. We're not truly connecting, we're performing. And people can feel that. The truth is, deep connections are built on authenticity, not effort. They arise when you stop trying to fit into someone else's mold and start standing firmly in your own. When you release the need to prove yourself, something profound happens. You shift from a place of seeking to a place of offering. Instead of asking, how can I make them want me, you ask, what do I bring to this relationship simply by being who I am? It's not about arrogance or indifference. It's about trusting that who you are at your core is already enough. But think of it like a flame. A flame doesn't beg others to notice its warmth or light. It simply burns, and in doing so, it naturally draws people to its glow. That's the kind of energy you embody when you stop chasing and start aligning with your authentic self. You become the flame not desperately seeking attention, but offering light and warmth to those who choose to come close. Let's reflect on why this shift is so transformative. When you're at ease with yourself, when you've embraced your own value, you stop needing others to complete you. This is where the real magic begins. Our relationships no longer feel like negotiations or transactions. They become invitations. Invitations for others to join you, not because you need them to, but because you choose to share your life with them. And here's the irony: when you no longer depend on someone's approval, they begin to see you in a new light. They sense your freedom, your confidence, your self-sufficiency, and it creates a kind of magnetism. People are drawn to those who are whole, who stand tall without leaning on others for their sense of balance. But this isn't a game or a tactic. It's a way of living. It's about recognizing that your worth doesn't come from someone else's opinion or presence. It comes from the way you inhabit your own life. When you let go of the need to convince anyone of your value, you create a space where real connections can flourish, where people are drawn to you not because of what you do for them, but because of who you are. So stop chasing and start aligning. Focus on becoming the person you're proud to be. Build a life that reflects your values, your passions, your joys. And in doing so, you will find that the right people, the ones who truly matter, will naturally be drawn to you. Not because you've convinced them, but because they can't help but recognize what's already so abundantly clear: you are enough. Always have been, always will be. When we speak of cultivating true strength, it's not about building walls or donning armor to protect ourselves from pain. True strength lies in our ability to remain open, vulnerable, and yet deeply grounded in who we are. It's not about being unshakable in the face of life's storms, but about bending gracefully, like a tree whose roots run so deep that even the fiercest winds cannot uproot it. Strength is often misunderstood. We're taught to equate it with control over situations, over emotions, over outcomes. But the paradox of real strength is that it doesn't come from control at all. It comes from surrendering control. It comes from allowing life to flow through us, unfiltered and unresisted, trusting that we are capable of navigating whatever it brings. Imagine holding onto a rope in a tug of war with the universe. Every time life pulls in a direction you don't want to go, you resist, your grip tightens, the tension builds, and soon you're exhausted, drained by the constant struggle. Now imagine letting go of the rope. What happens? The tension vanishes. You are no longer at war with life, but moving in harmony with its natural rhythms. This is what it means to cultivate inner strength, not by fighting against life's currents, but by learning to move with them, to trust that even in the chaos there is a deeper order at work, to stand firm not because you're invincible, but because you're unafraid of being vulnerable. Think about relationships for a moment. How often do we equate strength with silence, with not showing our emotions or admitting our fears? Yet some of the strongest moments in a relationship are when we have the courage to say, "This is who I am in all my complexity. Here is my joy, but also my pain, my hopes, and my doubts." It's in those moments of authenticity that true connection happens, because strength invites strength, invites strength. When you embody this kind of strength, you no longer feel the need to prove yourself or hold on to those who don't value you. You become secure in the understanding that your worth is not determined by how others perceive you, but by how you perceive yourself. You begin to realize that walking away from something that doesn't nurture you isn't a sign of weakness. It's a testament to your strength. This shift in perspective doesn't mean life becomes free of challenges. On the contrary, you'll still face difficulties, heartbreaks, and moments of doubt. But what changes is your relationship to these experiences. They no longer define you. They become part of your growth, like stones along a river, shaping the flow of the water but never stopping it. When you cultivate inner strength, people notice. It's not something you need to announce, it's something they feel. They see it in the way you carry yourself, in the quiet confidence of someone who knows their value and doesn't seek validation from others. They see it in the way you choose peace over conflict, authenticity over performance, and self-respect over compromise. This kind of strength has a ripple effect. It inspires those around you to find their own footing, to stand tall in their own truth. It challenges them to rise to your level rather than dragging you down to theirs. And for those who truly belong in your life, this strength doesn't intimidate, it reassures. It lets them know they're in the presence of someone who isn't afraid to be real, someone who will challenge them to grow. Not because you demand it, but because your presence naturally calls it forth. So I urge you to look within and ask, what does strength mean to me? Is it control or is it trust? Is it resistance or is it flow? True strength doesn't demand to be seen, it simply is. And when you find it within yourself, you'll no longer feel the need to chase or convince. You'll simply become, and that is enough. Life at its core is a delicate dance of connections, separations, and the space in between. We spend so much time seeking the approval of others, yearning to be seen, to be valued, to be held close. But have you ever noticed how the people who seem to command the deepest respect and admiration are often the ones who aren't seeking it at all? There's a mystery to them, a sense of self-sufficiency, a completeness that is magnetic. And this magnetism is not born out of strategy or manipulation, it's born out of an unshakable alignment with themselves. When you become the one they fear losing, it's not because you play games or follow rules about how to make someone want you. It's because you've cultivated a sense of wholeness within yourself that cannot be easily shaken. You are no longer a person chasing others for validation. Instead, you are someone so deeply rooted in your own value that you become a mirror for others to see their own potential. Think of a lighthouse. It doesn't move, it doesn't chase ships across the sea, begging them to notice its light. It stands firm, its presence steady and unwavering, guiding those who are lost back to safety. When you embody this kind of presence, people are drawn to you naturally, not because you demand their attention, but because your light is undeniable. But how do you cultivate this light? It begins with an understanding that you are not here to complete anyone else, nor are they here to complete you. This notion of finding our missing piece in another person is a seductive but flawed idea. You are already whole, already complete. Any relationship worth having is not about filling voids, but about sharing the overflow of your own fulfillment. This doesn't mean there won't be moments of loneliness or longing. We are, after all, deeply social beings wired to connect. But there's a profound difference between seeking connection out of fear and seeking it out of abundance. When you act from fear, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, you cling, you grasp, and in doing so, you push away the very thing you desire. But when you approach relationships or any interaction from a place of abundance, the energy shifts. You're no longer asking, what can I get from this person? Instead, you're asking, what can I share with them? And that shift is transformative. It changes the entire dynamic because people can feel the difference between someone who needs them to feel whole and someone who simply enjoys their presence. When you focus on becoming whole within yourself, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing. You stop bending yourself into shapes to fit into someone else's mold. And in that space of self-acceptance, you allow others to show up fully as themselves too. Ironically, this is often the moment when people begin to realize your value. It's not because you've changed in some dramatic way, but because your energy no longer screams of need. Instead, it radiates peace, confidence, and a quiet assurance that you are enough, just as you are. And that's a rare thing in a world so full of people trying to prove their worth. You see, becoming the one they fear losing isn't about instilling fear at all. It's about inspiring respect for the boundaries you hold, for the life you've built, and for the love you offer freely but not recklessly. It's about being so in tune with your own truth that losing you would mean losing something truly irreplaceable. So let us not strive to be the one they fear losing out of ego or pride. Let us instead strive to be the one whose presence is a gift, whose absence is felt, and whose essence cannot be replaced. And remember, when you stand in the fullness of your own light, you don't just become someone they fear losing. You become someone who inspires others to find their own light too.